Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I'm down under. I'm in Australia. You wouldn't know it because I couldn't have picked a blander, more boring backdrop for this video. But unfortunately, needs must. I am in Australia. I'm in Perth. I promise you. You can look at my Instagram feed and Twitter feed and whatever. I am here. But unfortunately, at this time, by the time you're watching it, it'll be even later. But right now, it's gone 9 o'clock at night. There is nothing of note. I can stand outside and do this, and probably the sound quality would be horrendous anyway. And literally, I'm in a very small room in my hotel, and the only place where there's a desk and somewhere I can kind of set this up to do has the door and the fire instructions, and please mind the step behind me. So I'm obviously very apologetic that there's not kangaroos and wallabies and koala bears dancing around behind me, or anything that even resembles anything Australian. I remember doing this one a year ago in Korea, and having this incredible Korean backdrop behind me, which really summed up beautifully the tour that I was on. This does not. This has a very yellow wall. It's a nice hotel. It's a nice hotel. It's just got a bit of an old school vibe about it. So yeah, sorry. And it's absolutely, I'm just about to tell you, just to let you know kind of what my day's been like today and how much of a paradox it is of the view that you are getting right now. So today I went to the zoo with Pedro Porro, James Maddison, Sergio Reguilon, Alfie Whiteman. I walked along and saw Dejan Kulusevski, Ben Davies, Brandon Austin, all kind of petting kangaroos, wallabies, koalas. Maybe it'd been great to have done a YouTube video there with them all in the background, but it's not really, how I do these kind of things. It's just going to be me sitting down and talking. It's just, sorry, it's actually making me laugh, the weird absolute juxtaposition of everything that's happening out here and the blandness and boringness of this background. I'm so sorry. But like I say, needs must. It's been the end of a very busy working day. As always, as it was in Korea, every day is absolutely full on. Obviously, don't weep for me. I'm off on an incredible tour of Australia, fly on to Thailand and Bangkok tomorrow. But there's lots to do. There's lots of players to interviewed loads of players so far. Perth is incredible. Perth is such an amazing place. If you're not aware, Perth is one of the most remote cities in the world. The nearest the nearest city that has more than 100,000 people close to Perth is 1,600 miles away. It's Adelaide, I think. Just to give you some context, like Sydney, Melbourne, places like that on the other side of Australia are like 2,000 miles away. It's mad. It's actually cheaper for people in Perth to go and fly to other countries than it is just to hop across Australia, because a hop across Australia is far more than a hop. It's just mad, the scope and vastness of this country. Just to give you another little example, I was flying, when I arrived in, I flew across Australia, the route I came, because I came via Hong Kong, had a connection there. And you look down and you're over Australia because the flight kind of thing's telling you, there's a little screen that tells you where you're going. But you look down and it's darkness. Whereas, when we fly over any other kind of European city or America or anything, you're used to seeing all the street lights and various lights and things like that. And when you fly over, as you're heading across to Perth for hours upon hours upon hours, it's darkness. It's because it's outback, and I think there's desert as well. It's just such a huge land. It's absolute madness. But yeah, Perth's lovely. Absolutely lovely. The area I'm staying in is like, it's got a Canary Wharf vibe to it. It's near Elizabeth Quay, and it's a beautiful area. There's a nice park nearby, and there's an island where kangaroos kind of roam. Like I say, I saw a load of them today at the zoo. It was very cool. You're kind of allowed to get very close to them. And one of the ones you're able to pet and everything. It's kind of this mad kind of, it's like almost like a unicorn for people from the other side of the world, because we don't see kangaroos, wallabies, and koalas. It's just kind of so strange. I felt like a kid again seeing these animals that you've only kind of read of or see on TV. But I digress. We're talking about all things Australian then rather than football. Been very fortunate to spend a fair bit of time with Ange Postecoglou, which has been great. Obviously, we've had 2 press conferences. I also went to a 45-minute breakfast Q&A, which was in this amazing place that was called Crown. I don't know if it's Crown Towers or Crown. It was the Crown in Perth. It's got this enormous ballroom with 500 people in there, CEOs of companies, loads and loads of Spurs fans, lots of very nice people. And it was a terrific event, and he was up there sitting in a kind of I think it was with a newsreader was doing a Q&A with him, so I got 45 minutes listening to kind of his background. Obviously I knew a fair bit of it through all the research that I've kind of shared with you guys, but then what was great after that was after he'd done that, he came in and sat down with us journalists for another 45 minutes just to chat. And you'll see various bits and pieces coming out from that over the next few days or so. It's fair to say everything you would believe you would get from talking with Ange Postecoglou for 45 minutes in a little room, I think it was just the 6 of us and him, is exactly what happened. He is a terrific communicator. He is a straight talker. He doesn't, accept any rubbish or, anything really. He's exactly what you'd imagine him to be. And do you know what? I think all of us came out of that just thinking, yeah, fair play. This is going to be fun. He comes across as a really good guy, a guy who has very, very strong beliefs, knows what he's doing. And yeah, his style of football is the kind of football we all want to see. So yeah, keep an eye on some little bits. I asked him about centre-backs and things like that and some transfer stuff, which we all put out yesterday. Yesterday. Sorry, I mixed up because, like I say, by the time you're watching that, it's probably going to be close to midnight by the time it all uploads and everything here. But for you guys, it's probably going to be early evening, perhaps. It's a 7-hour time difference. It's very strange because I woke up yesterday to go to this Q&A with Postecoglou and said good night to my wife, because she was going to bed. It was so strange the way the time difference works. It was an early start, obviously, yesterday morning. But yeah, it's honestly, you guys are going to hear a lot more of Postecoglou in the weeks and months to come, and you're going to like a lot of what you hear. I did wonder, because I've researched so much about him and heard so many of the stories told in slightly different ways, I was wondering, sitting down with 45 minutes with him, is it going to become repetitive? And is he going to say a lot of things I've read? It doesn't. It doesn't at all. It's it was very interesting. And like I say, keep an eye out there, because there's going to be a lot of stuff coming from it. You can imagine 45 minutes. There was a lot of topics covered, and he is a fascinating guy. But let's go straight to his first match, which, do you know what? I know people are going to say, it is what it is. It was a defeat. Those who might be kind of maybe didn't watch it, because I think your time, was it about 11 o'clock, lunchtime, you kind of kick off. Over here, I think it kicked off at 6 o'clock, if I remember correctly. People might have looked at that and looked at the scoreline and thought, they lost 3-2 to West Ham. How good can this new football be? It was very good. And it was the most tentative early steps, yet had some incredible football on display. It really did. And that's a huge thing, really, because I was looking at kind of the amount of time he's had with his players. He's had, by the time of that match, he did 18 days with the non-international players, which was only maybe half the squad. The international players had rocked up just for a handful of days before they flew off, and obviously The flying itself was about a day and a half's worth. Most of the international players didn't even start training until the Thursday, and they flew on the Friday. Then you had people like Sonny, who met them in Australia, so he didn't have to do 2 trips from South Korea all the way to England and all the way back again. Skippy joined up over here as well, so he and Sonny didn't get involved until the Saturday. Yet what we saw on Tuesday night against West Ham, there were so many little threads that just said to me, do you know what? It's the most enjoyable defeat I've watched Spurs in years. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and there will be people that think that's, sacrilege, you cannot say that. How can you enjoy a defeat? Because ultimately, the result didn't matter. So as soon as you kind of realise that, and you realise that a friendly, whether they won or lost, it didn't really make any difference. It was about what you were seeing. Oh my goodness, it was like night and day, some of the stuff. Honestly, they've been working pretty hard. They've been working double session a fair few of the days, but not all of them. He's trying to balance it up, Postecoglou, because I think the key thing for him is for the players' brains not to be knackered, because there is so much they need to take on with what he wants: the positioning, the passing, the playing out from the back, the patterns, the partnerships that he wants to see of various players on the pitch. If he knackers them out too much, they're not going to take in the massive loads of information he needs to take them to take in. It was quite interesting, because just going very slightly back 24 hours before that, we were at an open training session at the Wacker ground, the cricket ground in Perth, and it was a terrific atmosphere. 6,000 Spurs fans there. They could have sold out way more. They were very passionate, very noisy, fantastic. I spoke to loads of Spurs fans on Monday night. They were lovely. But the session was everything you'd expected from a session. It didn't seem to be anything kind of hidden or behind closed doors. It was very much what it said on the tin, an open training session. And Postecoglou put them through their various paces and various drills and things like that, lots of two-touch stuff. But what was fascinating was that they did, sorry, you can tell my voice is starting to go, all the talking I've done today. We recorded the podcast as well earlier. But what was fascinating was the practice match towards the end of it, because he essentially played the teams that he would play in the match in first and second half against each other, albeit with a couple of differences. The first half team had Tongi in it instead of Skippy. Skippy was in the second half team, and Sonny was up front. But obviously, Tongi picked up a whack on his ankle, didn't appear in the match at all. Should only be the one match he's out for. And then Sonny was just deemed that he'd just come back too recently, and especially he'd been coming back from his little bit of surgery, hadn't he? He'd only played a couple of minutes, not too long for Korea, and it was just felt they didn't want to rush him. Essentially, didn't want to cause any issues for him. So that meant the team switched up very slightly. Manor Solomon and Skippy came into the first half team, and Lo Celso and Sarr jumped into the what would be the second half team, with Alfie Devine pushing up from midfield onto the right of the front three. And do you know what? Having watched a year of... I'm sorry if it's a little bit quieter, by the way. It's only because I am in a hotel room and I don't want to shout, because otherwise I fear halfway through this video I'll get bang, bang, bang on a wall or the door. So I'm sorry if you have to turn the volume up even louder. But yeah, don't forget we'd had counter-attacking football for, years, the last 3-4 years. Spurs went out there on Tuesday night in the Optus Stadium, which is a very cool stadium, by the way, and they passed, and they passed, and then they passed some more. Just to give you the numbers, they completed 623 passes during the game. West Ham, 198. It gives you a good example there, a bit of context. And what was impressive was it wasn't passing for the sake of passing. It wasn't like sideways passing, let's just keep the ball. It was often forward passing, quick passing, direct passing. And the beauty of it all is they do it without fear already. Because, how do I put this? Postecoglou just creates this, it's like a security blanket, really, that the Spurs players can kind of nestle into. because he makes it very clear to them, I want you to do that. I want you to pass. I want you to play the ball out from the back in really tight spaces and situations, because it draws the other team on and it suddenly leaves space to get in behind there. And yeah, honestly, there were some moments where like you wince and you take a sharp intake of breath, and where defenders that you wouldn't normally see do that, Tangangas and Sanchez's and players like that, will suddenly just do this incredibly tight, quick passing. And they did it. I know, look, don't worry. We're going to talk about the negatives. We're going to talk about sort of defending for the goals. But in terms of the actual passing out from the back, a lot of the players that you would be normally worried about were very good under some pressure. West Ham didn't press too much, but enough times you could see when they did how they dealt with it. And it was really good to watch. It was really good to watch indeed. I was trying to add some more stats for you. There we go. I've got them here. So West Ham, I should state, just in the interest of kind of making clear, West Ham didn't bring, I'm not sure if it was all of their international players, but certainly a fair whack of them didn't go on the tour. It still was an experienced team. You know, you can tell from, you know, the Bonners and Danny Ings in there, Fabianski in goal, and Skamaka came off the bench as well and scored. But the key thing was just it was more about Spurs and how they used the ball. And they, where have I got it here? They had 72.2% of the possession. That's just unheard of. You know, Spurs have been like 30s and 40s in a lot of their games because of counter-attacking football. And it's not only that, but the pass success rate was 91%. So it's not like they were wasting the ball either. They were using it really well. And that's compared to the West Ham's 74% success rate with their passing. And like I say, ultimately the defenders had some iffy moments, which we're going to go into in more detail, but they did try to play the ball out. Sometimes there was one move with Ben Davies who played it out really well as well. It's... Sorry, just saying as I'm doing this, there's some more Harry Kane stuff coming out about contracts or not signing contracts and looking to move to Bayern Munich if he can. And it's interesting that. We'll talk about. We've got loads of Harry Kane stuff to come. Don't worry. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about not too much Harry Kane, because I kind of feel like it's just dominated this tour. If this tour was anywhere other than Australia, I would feel quite sorry for Postecoglou, because I would feel like they've really, everything's about Kane. But because it's Australia, Postecoglou has very much still been front and centre for the Australian media and everything. Although his first press conference here, mainly because of the English journalists here, the first 6 questions were all about Harry Kane, which he found quite amusing. But that's just the way it is. It's the way it's going to be when it's such a high profile player. But yeah, let's talk about Spurs for now and overall. So in all, Spurs had 32 shots on goal. 32 shots on goal. Fabianski had to make 11 saves. Honestly, especially second half, they just were camped in West Ham's half, just constantly kind of trying to batter the door down, really. And what was lovely to see is you had patterns of play and the movement getting down the wings constantly. Sometimes through the middle, some lovely 1-2s. There was one that Bissouma played a lovely 1-2 with Skippy. Skippy back-heeled it. Kane played a dummy and the ball went through. And Bissouma, the goalkeeper, got to his shot. And honestly, there was so many little moments like that. He likes to use the flanks as well. Postecoglou's system really kind of works with a lot of the ball getting in from the flanks. And, you know, I have no idea how they only scored 2 of the 32 shots. I really don't know that. I guess that is just... And this is the thing. It's just the bare threads. It's the early little steps that are being taken after just a few days working. Yet we witnessed a completely different style of football. Richarlison and Harry Kane weren't particularly sharp. They looked a little bit kind of like players that have only just returned to playing football after 3 weeks off. And had they been sharp, you'd imagine that scoreline would have been ridiculous. And I actually asked David Moyes after the game. I thought I'd ask him about what he'd made of Spurs and what he expects from them under Postecoglou. He said, I've come across Ange a few times and what he did at Celtic was remarkable. How his teams play, have a very good style. I think you saw bits of that tonight, which probably we expected maybe a bit slightly different. I think Tottenham are a very good side. They have an amazing centre-forward, probably the best in the world. While you've got an amazing centre-forward, you've always got a chance of winning games. That's before you even start talking about some of the other players. We were a bit fortunate that we didn't concede more, but we also defended well. Lucas Fabianski made a couple of really good saves here, and as the game went on, he looked competent. Quite the praise there for Lucas Fabianski. But yeah, it's true. If Fabianski hadn't pulled off a few good saves, Spurs would have, honestly, I think it would have just kept. They would have kept rolling in. It could have been a 5, 6, 7 goal kind of game. But I also asked Postecoglou about it. And it was interesting. He was pleased that he could see little elements of his ideas and philosophy coming into play, but you could also see he still, even though it was a friendly, was not happy with the defeat, and he wasn't happy with, well, not wasn't happy, but he still felt there's a long way to go, which is absolutely correct. Here's his reply to me when I said about it. You could see little bits of the Postecoglou way in there. He said, yeah, I think so. From my perspective, that's what we were looking for tonight. We've obviously been working really hard in training, and I didn't expect the lads to be super sharp because this is a stage where you're getting your conditioning, but we have been working on stuff. We want to see some of that out there, and I think in both halves there was a real willingness from the boys to try to put in place the stuff we've been working on. At times it looked good, but we're still very much in the infancy of trying to establish the way we want to play in our structures. For me, the key thing is that they're trying out there to implement it, and for the most part it was really good. And on playing the ball out from the back. He said, you know there are consequences if we don't get that right, but I'm trying to provide a security and a structure to the players to encourage them to release that fear and play that kind of football. That's the kind of team we want to be. At the moment there will be missteps along the way, that's only natural, but I'm trying to make sure the players understand that veering away or shying away from that will mean us playing the kind of football that I don't want us to play. So we have to be all in on this stuff. For the most part, I think they were trying to be that, but obviously at times it didn't flow as well because we weren't really sure what position to take up. But the good thing is that we've got moments there which we can show them that under extreme pressure, you can get these kind of outcomes, which allows us then to work on it. And that is the thing. That's the beauty of if you can get around teams that press or get around any kind of press, suddenly so much space opens up behind. And it was fascinating to see the way the structure worked. You had Bissouma coming back to get the ball, splitting the two centre-backs, and while he did that, one of the full-backs would come inside an inverted full-back and sit right in the centre of midfield. So you had Reguilon, who'd only ever in the past see way out wide on the left, would suddenly be sitting in the middle of Spurs' central midfield, and Porro would do it sometimes as well. It's honestly, and it's a system that relies on like natural link-ups, pairings of players. We saw it with Reguilon and Solomon had some nice little link-ups down one side. Porro and Kulusevski occasionally. We've seen that obviously in the Premier League before, and Bissouma and Maddison linked up quite well as well at a few times. There's a few other partnerships, but actually, interestingly, Postecoglou said he didn't see enough of that. That's the kind of thing he wants to see. He said, not at the moment, but that's going to be an important part because when you're trying to play the kind of football we want, it is a lot about relationships between certain parts of the field, whether that's the left side, right side, the centre-backs, the full-backs, and you can only get that relationship by playing with each other, training those patterns over and over, and at the moment it's fair to say that we haven't done enough of it. Ivan and Destiny, all our internationals arrived less than a week ago. It was last Thursday, I think, that they all got together. So you're talking about 5 days' work. So there isn't going to be those relationships. But when I see them trying, and it's a bit mechanical at the moment rather than natural because they're going because I've told them to go rather than because they're feeling it, it's a good place for me. And it's about me now trying to keep giving them the information with the other coaches, setting up training so that it does become an instinctual thing and a relationship thing where they work together. So it was a start. It wasn't perfect by all means, and don't worry, we're going to talk about defence. I can hear people say, but they lost, and the defence was rubbish, and it needs new defenders. and we are going to talk about that, don't worry. But I want to get through the positives first, because it was a really positive overall first introduction to the Postecoglou way at Tottenham Hotspur. And I think when you see a little bit of quality kind of in those positions, in the areas where it hadn't really worked, then you'll see, you'll see the way you'll see the proper football. As soon as you get the players with the right quality in the right areas, the Postecoglou system has the potential to absolutely fly. It really could. It's a form of lovely, beautiful football. Obviously, as long as you've got a good defence backing it up, there's no reason why it can't really be a massive thing for Spurs in the months and hopefully years ahead. And I know it's all just one game, but I think it was just the fact that I was so surprised at how much of the Postecoglou way I saw in this first game. I think I expect to see little elements of it, but I didn't expect to see as much as I saw. I didn't expect to see 32 shots on goal. I mean, that was crazy. So let's have a little look at the attacking elements first, which I saw. Manor Solomon was very, very confident. He's a tricky little player. To be the most dangerous of a front three that contained Kane and Kulusevski as well was impressive. Dribbling was very good. Looks to cut inside as much as he can off the left. What I would say is, while I saw a lot of good things and he had chances to score and he did set up a couple of opportunities as well, I still want to see that he's not going to end up being another Lucas Moura in terms of a lot of his play is very direct and trying to run at goal himself. I would like to see that he does attempt to get the ball in more often and cross the ball into the box, because that is something, when you look at his career, it's 15 assists in 203 matches for his clubs. So that's an area where you can definitely improve him. But he is only 23 years old. That's the key, isn't it? And I've got quotes from him here. In the mix zone after the game, he said, "I hope to bring as much as possible to Tottenham, to try to create chances, to assist, to score goals. We created so many chances against West Ham, but we didn't exploit them the way we needed to. We will improve those things, and I think we had a good performance. I always want to improve myself and to improve the team. That's my goal. I'm still young, so I still have big room to improve. I haven't showed anything yet, I think. I will try to bring energy, I will try to bring speed, dribble for the team, and to help as much as possible." And he's very kind of old school. He's very much just get his head down and go for it kind of guy. He seems a very pleasant character as well. Very good interview. Very just aware of his strengths, but also aware that he needs to improve as well. What else we got? Kulusevski. He had some moments. He had some bright moments. I wouldn't say he was completely at his best, as he wouldn't be at this point of the year. Create some little opportunities for others. I think he had one shot that was saved as well. Kulusevski, long way for him to go as well. But I do think we'll see more of the Kulusevski we knew in the first 6 months of his time at Spurs than the one that struggled a little bit, because I think Postecoglou will release him, as it were, not quite literally, but release the shackles from him is probably the best way. Let's have a little look at what else we're going to talk about. Harry Kane, Richarlison. I kind of touched on those already. Sorry, I'm just looking through my notes. I'm having to do this in a slightly different way because my setup's a little bit different, as you can tell. I think am I closer to the camera? I think I am as well. I'm literally having to kind of almost work at a desk. It's Richarlison. My thing with Richarlison, offsides. That's my main thing. I was trying to think of a different way to put it. But he just struggles with the offside flag, and he struggles with when to make his runs. It reminds me of obviously a far kind of more potent goal scorer, but it does remind me of Jermaine Defoe, who would always play on the shoulder of the defender, and it would end up him getting a lot of offsides. But yeah, with Richarlison, it's definitely something it kind of needs to work on. And obviously, we've seen the stories, obviously, of the fact that if Harry Kane were to go, then Richarlison likely would be given the shot to, I suppose he's a more natural fit, the Postecoglou number 9. But one Premier League goal last season, compared to a guy that scored 30. It's like, yes, he's the Postecoglou type number 9 in terms of, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Like a sacrificial lamb, I guess is one way to put it. You just know that you've got to constantly run yourself into the ground for the team, press and all of that. But I actually do think, and I've seen that over the years, Postecoglou has tweaked his team anyway. If he's had to fit in strikers, like Viduka's another example of someone that didn't really fit that archetype, so he would change it, and he would do that for Harry Kane. It was interesting watching Kane on Tuesday night, that he didn't drop deep as much as he normally would. He very much was he would sometimes go from side to side, but mostly he was in and around the box, which obviously is going to be something interesting, whether he prefers that or not. It'll keep him fitter to do a little bit of pressing if he's not constantly running up and down the pitch. But yeah, Richarlison, he's still got to go a little way to kind of prove to me that he could be the replacement. I don't think anyone can be an absolute Kane replacement, but I expect whoever it is, if that were to happen, that player could score a hefty amount of goals. And look, Postecoglou's team will create a lot of chances, but I guess it's about his finishing, and it's seeing what comes. I asked Postecoglou afterwards about Kane and Richarlison looking rusty, and he said, yeah, potentially. But again, if we keep creating those kind of chances, I have no doubt that they'll finish them. They're both quality strikers. For me, the outcomes become secondary right now. How we're playing our football, what kind of tempo we're playing at, our structures are much more important than the outcomes. Obviously, there were some positive things, not all positive, but certainly enough there to, at least from my perspective, to say that the boys are trying to change the way we play. And obviously, look, all eyes are on Harry Kane. Of course, they're going to be. Sorry. As you can probably tell, I'm also getting loads of kind of messages in and stuff as well, because there's so much going on right now. We're kind of trying to keep a track of what Spurs are doing in the transfer market and everything. Kane. There's only one place to start, because it's pretty much all kind of happening in the background actually as I'm recording this, and there seems to be suggestions that Harry Kane will not sign any new contract whatsoever. That's not something he's looking to do, and he just wants to move to Bayern. From what I understand at this exact point in time as I'm recording this, is that there's no intention to sign a contract this summer, and this is something I've said before, but absolutely there's no sense from speaking to anyone really that Harry Kane, how do I put this? I think the best way to put this is kind of what I said before, and it still exactly stands, that Harry Kane is open to all avenues. If Spurs were to accept an offer from Bayern Munich, he would look at that offer and he would decide on a move. If Bayern Munich do not make a bid that is acceptable for Tottenham, then Harry Kane is open to playing the next season at the club, and then maybe leaving on a free transfer if he's not happy with how things are going. But the third option is also, from what I understand, absolutely open, remains open to Harry Kane, is that if he sticks around, plays under Postecoglou, really enjoys it, feels like the club are moving forward and that there's a chance of winning trophies, then there is every chance that a new contract could be an option in the later this year. So, yeah, it's all about kind of what happens next. This is the thing. There's a lot of how do I put this? Because I don't want to do anyone else's reporting down whatsoever, because everyone hears from different people, everyone speaks to different people, and everyone gets, we all speak to, let's say, I don't know, agents, people around players, people within clubs, people within other clubs, people that know people. It's such a weird, tangled web that's weaved. But ultimately, a lot of it is all speculation until Bayern do anything, because there is so much noise coming from Munich. There's so much, and there's, even as we kind of come out in here on tour, there was more. There was Hoeneß, and I've forgotten his name. There's another guy, because Hoeneß is the honorary president, isn't he, of Bayern? And there was another chap high up. It begins with a K. It's gone out of my head. Then started talking about it. And just honestly, there's constant new noise coming out of Bayern, and all the senses within Spurs is that, well, okay, it's noise, great. Are you actually going to try to make any bid that shows that you really do want Harry Kane? It's like, in a way, you probably remember this 2 years ago, we were talking about Man City, and we were talking about in the same way of, like, if they really want Harry Kane, why would they not come in with this huge mega offer for him? And it's kind of the same with Bayern. You're kind of saying about, the player wants to come to us, we want him, and some of the Hoeneß quotes were like ridiculous. It was like, Daniel Levy will buckle, or Tottenham will buckle, Daniel Levy will have to name a price. No, he doesn't. Make an offer that actually, we know that they're looking for likely to be over £100 million. Oh yeah, crack on with your £68 million bid. Unless something drastically changes, I can't see why Spurs would suddenly change their mind completely. So yeah, as I say, my latest information, which is right now, as I'm recording this, is that Harry Kane is open to all three of those options, and we'll see how it plays out. I totally understand the having no intention of signing a new contract this summer. Absolutely right. You need to see how it all shakes out and how it pans out, what it's like with Postecoglou, who the club brings in with transfers. Are they seriously going to improve that defence? If Højbjerg goes, do they bring in a really good midfielder to replace him? There's so many aspects to this, so many of them, and I understand that completely. But yeah, from what I understand, it's not a case that he has no intention of signing a contract whatsoever in the future at all. It's very much still exactly that. All three options open. So, I can kind of see, it's really frustrating because I can see social media going absolutely mad about it. But yeah, literally that's why if I was ever so slightly distracted, it's because I was firing multiple kind of messages off to various people to try and get the actual latest on the situation from everyone possible that could be connected or anyone that's available. So very quickly back to Postecoglou. During that Q&A that I was at, the one before our sit down, the actual kind of breakfast with Ange, or on the couch, on the sofa with Ange, I think that was the way they called it, but it actually wasn't a sofa, it was two chairs. Scott Munn was there, actually, forgot to mention. Unless I just mentioned. No, I don't think I did. I'm confusing it with the podcast I recorded earlier. Scott Munn was there and just happened to be passing by in Australia, obviously in an unofficial capacity, just there as one of the 500 guests that were in the room, the incoming chief football officer, because obviously we're still waiting for his official start date. But the last question of the whole thing was about Harry Kane. Like I say, that they're not as fascinated about the Harry Kane thing as they are just about Postecoglou. But I think they felt they kind of had to ask. So the last question was whether Kane would be up front for Tottenham when the season begins. And Postecoglou said, I certainly hope so. Again, it's one of those things when you're in this role, I've learned that you've got to deal with the certainties that are before you. Because if you start thinking about what happens, if that happens, and that happens, there are too many things that can be floating. Sorry, if you start thinking about what happens, if that happens, and whether that happens, I think that's what he said. There are too many things that can be floating in the air at any time when you lose focus on what's the most important thing. The most important thing for me right now is to build a team that's going to be successful in the Premier League. If I wait to see what an outcome is before I start that process, I'm going to lose valuable time. He's with the club at the moment. He's a legend of the football club already. If he retired today, they'd probably still build a statue for him. He's a fantastic guy, a fantastic professional, but with everything in life, there are always uncertainties there. I don't try to predict. You always have contingencies in your head, not just about Harry, but about any player, because knock on wood, someone could get injured on the eve of this season, and you've got to be ready as a manager for all possibilities. It's one of the attractions of the role, I guess, to be able to work with people like Harry and Sonny and the guys who are already Premier footballers in their own right, but also for the club. Hopefully, I get to work with Harry a lot longer. And the problem is, the longer Bayern mess around and make their noises and don't actually kind of make a move, the less likely Spurs are even going to think about selling Kane. Because we'll all remember the Berbatov mess when it went to Man U so late on the final kind of hours of the transfer deadline day, and they ended up Fraser Campbell, wasn't it, came on loan the other direction, and I think Robbie Keane had also left that window. So yeah, it was a complete utter mess, and Levy will never want that to happen again. So I'd be intrigued to see whether there's some kind of deadline set by Levy. Is like, okay, you're making all your noise. If you feel like you're going to make a mid, make it by now. But I even wonder whether it might just be clear. I don't know. It's just such a strange situation. There was at times in the early days here when we first arrived that I was kind of flip-flopping back and forth of, oh, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? It was, Postecoglou was using terms like, while he's here and things like that. But I just think the longer Bayern leave it, the more. I know Richarlison's there, like I say, but you still have to bring in players to replace at least the goal output, because Richarlison's not going to at this stage unless he has an incredible development. Look, Spurs would rightly say he's a £60 million signing and he's Brazil's number 9. Yes, but on paper, he also hasn't scored enough Premier League goals to be a direct replacement for Harry Kane, or at least a slight replacement for him. We know Spurs would love to tie Kane down to that mega deal. They've offered him the opportunity to sit down, and understandably that's not going to happen now at the moment, but let's see what happens. It's all on Bayern, really. At the moment, Spurs are not selling for any daft silly price. Kane isn't leaving unless Sophia's agreed with another club. And the only one that really can try to influence it is Bayern by making some kind of huge bid. If they do that, then everyone's got a decision to make. If they don't, then it just drifts into Harry Kane playing out this season, and the questions just will be whether he ends up signing a new contract or not. Personally, I hope he stays. Of course I hope he stays. I think a Postecoglou team with Kane in it would be fearsome. It would be such a thing to fear, to use the same word again. I think it would be incredible. We'll see. What else? Other attacking players. We can't talk about Kane the whole time. Interestingly, some of the players that I think we expected to leave were the ones that they may still leave, were actually the ones that were quite impressive in the second half. Lo Celso, like I say, didn't look like he was going to be in the original first or second half starting lineups, but he came in, looked bright on the left of the midfield three, scored a lovely finish, really nice volley. Sanchez heading on Perisic's cross, and then Perisic himself played very well. We know his deliveries are top class so much of the time. And yeah, he was on the left of the front three and he looked good. Perfect ball in for Sanchez to head on, and a really lovely ball for Destiny Udogie to head in. Destiny Udogie, by the way, interviewed him early in the week and actually asked him, because I don't say he knows, but everyone knows my pronunciation is so awful. So every time there's a new signing with a name that potentially I could mangle, I ask it. So I asked him and he said it is Udogie. Because I've heard some people saying Udogie and things like that. It's Udogie. He's a very nice guy. Very pleasant chap, actually. Really nice indeed. So I thought he was very good. I thought Pape Matar, again, who I don't think was going to be playing in that second half team to begin with. I could be wrong, but certainly how close those two teams were to the two teams that ended up playing. Pape Matar came in. He's got that lovely natural ability with the ball and that composure in tight spaces, which really, I think, mark him out as a really good potential Ange Postecoglou number 8. So hopefully we'll see that going forward. I'm just very wary that I'm kind of leaning in. It's because, like I say, I've got my kind of notes and things on my laptop doing it this slightly different way, and I'm kind of leaning in like an old man looking at them, and that's bringing me very close to the screen. You don't need that. Trust me, you don't need that. So yeah, Sarr I was very impressed with, but you know what? It was a younger player who impressed me even more than any of them on the day, and that was Alfie Devine. I was so impressed with Alfie because I've spoken about Alfie before, but if you're not aware, he is normally a central, mainly attacking midfielder. He can play in a kind of a more central box-to-box role, but mainly he's an attacking midfielder. But because of that change, he was, well, if they were going to play with the teams that were in the practice match, he would have been in the midfield three with Skip and Højbjerg. So as it was, because Solomon switched to the first half team, and they were bringing in Sarr and Lo Celso, because obviously Skip went across there as well, Alfie Devine played on the right of the front three, which, yeah, was... I don't know if I've ever seen him play on the flank before. I've seen him play quite high up the pitch, but I don't think I've seen him on the right. I'm trying to think of any under-21s or under-19 UEFA Youth League matches, if he ever kind of played there. But you know what? He looked like he had always played there. It was a little bit, I know it's high praise and I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but there's a little bit of a Phil Foden-y way that he played, in that he was constantly moving, really good kind of runs and taking the ball past people, getting into these little pockets of space. Hit a couple of really nice balls into the box, and also had the shot that was pushed wide from a tight angle that ended up leading to the second goal, the corner for the second goal. So I was really, really happy for Alfie. That was kind of a big moment for him to play 45 minutes of Postecoglou's first game. And I think give Postecoglou a fair bit to think about, because, look, you've heard me say this before, but I think he would benefit hugely from a loan move next season. Whether it be in the Championship, League One, I don't know. But certainly, that's kind of what I feel he needs. But if I'm Postecoglou, I'm looking at him and thinking, I want to coach players, I want to develop them, and this young guy, he could be something. He could be, he could really be one of my number 8s. He's only 18 years old, but then I guess the question is how many minutes can he give him? Whether he feels that he can bring him on from the bench enough to give him the minutes that he needs, and that will be the crux of it. Maybe the same with Pape Matar. If they don't feel like they're going to give them enough game time because there's not enough games, there's no European football, then maybe you have to loan him out. But I think Alfie did himself the world of good. Don't be shocked if he gets more minutes. I think the second game against Leicester, Postecoglou said he's going to try and give players, a certain bulk of players, 60 minutes rather than the 45. So you may find that a lot of the players in the second half are only going to get like half an hour or so, but half an hour is enough for Alfie Devine to impress. And at the moment, if it happens, it's all subject to change, but among the players that we're hopefully getting to interview in the Asian tour of part of this tour, Alfie Devine could be one of them. So I'm really looking forward to that. I would love to put some questions to Alfie, because, I think he's, of all the young players I see, he's one of the ones I think he might make it. I think he's got enough about him to be a Premier League player, and hopefully at Tottenham as well. So, yeah, keep an eye on young Alfie. Like I say, created 32 shots on goal. Spurs only scored twice is frustrating, but I think you have to look at the fact of how many chances they created. They're going to cut so many teams apart. It's going to be incredible. It really is. Bissouma. I can't talk about Bissouma. Bissouma and Uncle Ange. Bissouma is going to be central, I think, quite literally to everything that Postecoglou wants to do at Tottenham. He looks, having seen him kind of around the place, and also in the videos that we saw before they came out here, he looks like he's in such a good place. He looks so happy. He looks so confident. It just feels like he's found his place now at Tottenham. I do think maybe with the fact that Højbjerg potentially is moving on. Bentancur obviously is not coming back till maybe September, October. I think Bissouma knows he's going to be the main man, and I do actually know that for a fact because, from what I understand, Postecoglou has been repeatedly telling him that he's going to be such an important player for him this season, really building up his confidence, and also telling him he really wants him to become a bit of a leader now and start encouraging the young players as well, lead by example with them. And I thought it was really interesting that I've seen it over here on Monday night's training. We saw a little bit of it as well, but also there's a video, if you look back, and some of the training sessions in Hotspur Way before they came out, where you could see Bissouma talking to the younger players and really encouraging them and telling them what he wanted and what they needed to do to win the game. And I think it's fascinating that clearly Postecoglou's words have already got through to him, and he's trying to be that kind of guy. Because let's be honest, last season was a nightmare for him. Got COVID this time last year in Korea, had to stay in his hotel room after the team had left to come back home. Then went into a Conte team that he struggled to adapt to. You know, Conte midfield is a quite a rigid beast. It's very much a set style of repetitive play. And Bissouma's kind of not like that. I wouldn't say he's a free spirit or anything, but he needs to be able to express himself on the pitch. And obviously then had that stress fracture in his ankle, which required surgery. He was out for 3 months. But actually, when he came back from that, obviously returned to the Ryan Mason kind of football with more freedom for him in the midfield. And we saw real glimpses of the Bissouma of Brighton. You know, he was one of the best midfielders in the Premier League outside the top 6. He was. Had he not been only had a year left in his contract, he would have been a £60 million player probably. And I just think it feels like now he's happy again. He can feel himself as one of the main men, and he can, you know, even silly little things like he's taken charge of the music in the dressing room. He's kind of involved with all the groups. There's no cliques. He's kind of around all the groups. There was that really funny little video that came out. Was it singing muchachos or something with like the South American lads and things like that? And yeah, it's he's a really popular player within the squad, and I love the fact that Postecoglou is just kind of stoking him up. You know, like a fire, just the wind beneath his wings, if you want to go really cheesy about it. And that's what he does. Doesn't say much to players, but what he says absolutely cuts right through and gets into their head. And actually, we've got Bissouma stopped in the mix zone, and it says it all, really. When he was asked about Postecoglou, he said he gives us confidence. He's like a dad, uncle, friend for us. So we're happy to be with him, and we're trying to do what he wants. Against West Ham, he was good because we played our football the way he wanted the team to play. The result wasn't good for us, but we continue to work hard for the next game and try to win. He's good with us. He gives us confidence. He comes to his players and talks to us all. That's really important in the changing room. When the gaffer comes and speaks to his players, that means everything. You know how we have to do it. You have to wonder whether that's a little dig maybe at Conte. Maybe Conte didn't talk to everyone. I don't know. And it might not be. It might not be. But it's interesting just the way he said that. And you can just tell he's relishing being fully fit, Bissouma. He's in a system that will get the best out of him. The number 6 role, I think, suits him perfectly. He said, I'm really happy to be back like this and playing football like this. It's amazing. The important thing is a win. We can't just say it's just a friendly game. We want to win everything to give us confidence before the start of the season. It's hard, but at the same time, it's good because we're coming stronger, and we'll see. And yeah, that number 6, he was so confident. It was a little nutmeg he did at one point. And like I said, that lovely 1-2 with Skippy. He's just driving the team on. Whereas last season, it almost felt like he was just like, oh, and trying to audition for everyone and things like that. Whereas actually just trying to be himself. And he was asked about the playing in the number 6 role for Postecoglou, and he said, I really like the way we play, but you have to adapt yourself. The coach can ask me to play at right back, left back, centre back. In my head, I'm ready to play every position for my team, but I'm happy to play the way I played. I really like it. And obviously also linking up with James Maddison as well. Some really nice kind of link-up play where he'd get it to Maddison and Maddison would spread it out wide to Solomon, and it was all kind of quick passing, exactly what Postecoglou wanted. And Bissouma was asked about Maddison. He said, everyone knows he's an amazing player. We know he's going to help us a lot with his experience. We're confident with him. We're trying to push him like we push each other. He's a really good guy. We're happy to be with him, and we know he's going to help the team. And yeah, Bissouma's at that age now. He's 26. There's so many players at Spurs that are 26. Like Tongi, Vicario's come in, he's 26. And when you're, I feel like there's others at 26 as well. But when you're at that age, it's that age where you then have to step on to the next level. I don't know, I wouldn't say you're definitely in your prime at that point, but you are then stepping onto the level where you start to reach your prime. And that's where Bissouma needs to be now. And yeah, I love the fact that Postecoglou is kind of creating this rhythm, and he wants Bissouma really to play to his beat. It's very cool. And I'm hoping for a massive season from Bissouma. If he can steer clear of injury, I think it's coming. And I think he will be, when we look at the Postecoglou era, you'll think of Bissouma, I think. And, get Bentancur back alongside him. Bentancur, Bissouma and Maddison could be a wonderful trio. And then there's so many other options that you could put in there as well, and young players that will evolve like Skippy and Sarr, and maybe even Devine going forward in the future. And like I say, if Højbjerg goes, and we know they have interest in Conor Gallagher, I saw Douglas Luiz linked today, but certainly Gallagher, could be one that could grow in for the future as well. Luiz, I don't know if it's too expensive, to be honest. As in, I don't know whether Villa would let him go for anything within the realms of possibility. So that's all the positives. We've got a lot of positives out of the way. We have to look at the defence. We have to. Because at times it did look exactly like it always looked. Not many times, because this is the thing, isn't it? Is that this is the life of a defender. Is that you can play an entire game and look quite good. Like Tanganga, for instance. Tanganga made loads of blocks in the second half in his box. Sorry, first half in his box. And passed really well under pressure. Yet, crucial moment, second goal, he allows Divin Mubama. I need to get that right. So awful with names. You need to, he didn't get close enough, and he just got in between Porro and him to head in the corner. And Davinson Sanchez had some really good moments in possession as well, which, technically is something that we normally slate him for. We kind of feel like under pressure he isn't that good, but he actually looked like he had a bit of a weight off his shoulders, and he played some good passes and a few good drives out with the ball, and obviously headed on technically got an assist, I'd imagine, for Lo Celso's volley as well. But ultimately it's about those moments of concentration. That's what you'll be judged on. That's the difference between the best defenders and the rest of the defenders. But yeah, there were frailties kind of across the defence at times. You could say that, they only really restricted them to 4 chances, but if they're going to score 3, it doesn't matter, because you can't really give them any sniffs of goal. Sergio Reguilon wasn't the greatest. Sergio Reguilon was all right going forward with Solomon, but that bit of defending for Danny Ings for the first goal was one of those weird ones where he kind of hung out a leg for a headed ball. It was like, well, what are you trying to get, the ball or get the man? It was awful defending, and Ings just really had quite an easy route to just head it in. And then, like I say, Mbama got in between Porro and Tanganga to head home. Second half, again, Sanchez, switch off moment. Emerson stuck up the pitch, but then kind of that's what Postecoglou probably wanted him to do. Lovely ball from Pablo Fornals, don't get me wrong, but Scamacca just was able to kind of ghost in behind Sanchez. He was very, very static. Nice finish, but yeah, it wasn't good enough. It's familiar territory. To be fair, Postecoglou did take part blame for it because 2 of the goals came from set pieces. He said, "The goals we conceded are partly on me. We haven't done loads of work on those kind of defensive areas and structures around set pieces and stuff. I can't expect the guys to take everything on board. I thought for the most part defensively the pressure was really good and we didn't allow too many chances, but we don't want to be conceding goals with them producing a small number of chances. But that's not the sort of stuff worked on. There's still things in our structure where we could have moved the ball quicker and guys aren't in exactly the position they need to be. There are a few things we need to keep developing as it's only natural as they get fitter to play this kind of football. We're still in the early stages. At the same time, we only have 3 or so weeks to get ready for the first game, so we're working hard." And that's the key, is a chunk of the Postecoglou defending is kind of done from the front. There's pressing and in the midfield as well, and the inverted fullbacks is to stop that ball even getting to the stage where it gets near the box. And yeah, I think I appreciate the fact that it's such a huge philosophy shift that all the sessions have pretty much been geared towards getting that in their minds, getting this idea of how to use the ball in possession, this idea of how to spread it quickly under pressure and all of that. Once that's the biggest hurdle. If you can get that in their heads, then of course in the weeks before the season starts you'll really start to work on the defensive shape and the set piece defending and things like that. So yeah, I appreciate that all aspects and focus is being put into that right now. So I get that, and you should hopefully see, as with each friendly, I guess, the defending improving. It'll be interesting to see whether while they're trying to bring in a new central defender or 2, whether Dyer ends up coming into that defence or not. We shall see. But it's interesting looking at the fullbacks as well. I think both Reguilón and Porro offer plenty going forward. Porro's probably the better one with the crossing. But obviously defensively they've got a lot to work on. Porro's only 23, so he's got a lot of time to work on that. Reguilón maybe not so. Out of all of those, I still think Reguilón probably heads out the door, especially as Cess obviously is injured, has had his surgery, so he's not going to be able to go anywhere on loan this window. Udogie, I thought he looked very good, very strong on the ball, very skillful. There was one moment he drove up the pitch with the ball. It looked like it was super glued to his foot. It was an incredible kind of bit of control as he went up the pitch. And if you haven't seen it, there's a little clip from training the night before where Porro rushes at him to try and press and get the ball. And Udogie does this incredible turn. It was a nice moment from Davies. Davies was under pressure, played the ball out to him, and with Porro rushing in, Udogie just does this turn, and Porro goes, just flies past him. It's very, very nice. He's going to be some player, Udogie. Interviewed him earlier in the week as well. He's a really good guy. He's very confident. I asked him about like Kulusevski and players that he'd played in the Italian league, Spurs players. And I said, like, what was it like playing against Kulusevski? And he was like, played against him once. Yeah, I kept him covered. He was fine. And it was true. I looked it up. Kulusevski went off after 45 minutes. They actually took him off, tactical change. And then he was like, Vaccaro, who was asked about, you played against him. He's like, no, I didn't score against him. He was lucky. He was very lucky. And it's really funny. He's got this real confidence about himself, but yet while also knowing that he's only 20 and has to improve a lot. And I love it. As long as the confidence isn't arrogance, as long as confidence is balanced by the knowledge that you need to improve, that's huge. And he's a really nice guy. He was telling about talking about his interests of NBA and tennis. And he and I both did the same thing of staying up to watch the Wimbledon final and getting absolutely knackered because it went on in Australia. It was here till gone 2 a.m. He's a big Djokovic fan, is Udogi, so he wanted to watch it for that. It gave me a real sense, it did, of what the fans across the world must be like, or what it must be like for them to watch Spurs matches in the early hours. Fair play. But yeah, I don't know whether he'll start the season as a first choice left back. There's a part of me that wonders whether, for experience wise, Ben Davies does. Just while they're continuing to work on Udogi's defensive aspects, rather than throwing him in against Brentford and Man U. Whereas Ben Davies, especially, don't forget that it's an inverted fullback. So for Ben Davies, he'll be quite comfortable coming into the centre and kind of plugging the gap that Bissouma is leaving when he comes back to get the ball. So yeah, it's not me saying that's going to happen. Definitely, it's just me kind of thinking that's the way I would hypothesize it might happen. So yeah, we shall see. And Vicario himself, the other Italian in the squad, it's difficult to judge him really on this. I felt like the 2 first half goals that he was there for, point blank range headers, I don't think he could have done anything with it. A couple of iffy moments. There was one sliced kick out for a corner, which actually they scored from. And he went for a punch, which he punched up in the air and absolutely poleaxed Tanganga and Ogbonna in the process. So, yeah, the little things that's got to be ironed out, and so is, and just he's very new to the team, and there's actually, we interviewed, and that's going out at the moment later tonight, so keep an eye out for that. Fascinating guy, Vicario. Very, very good talker. Very like Udogi, both excellent English speaking. With Udogi, it's because he grew up in Verona, but his parents both came from Nigeria, and their first language they spoke at home was English. Whereas with Vicario, it was just a case of learning Italian at school. So, learning English at school. He knew Italian. But yeah, really, really interesting. So keep an eye out for that. But he did make a good low save, didn't he, for Jared Bowen? I forgot about that just before half time as well. He just needs to settle in. Demands of being a Postecoglou goalkeeper with the ball at your feet, it's just got to get used to it. And he was brought in for that purpose because they felt he could adapt to it. And Postecoglou liked his long journey himself because he's come from the depths of Italian football, Serie D, many years ago, but he's kind of had to work his way up to become one of the most respected keepers in Serie A last season. So, he was good. He's a very warm character, and I think he's quite a strong character as well. Certainly, you see him kind of walking into training with his arm round a different player each training session, and he's getting to know everyone quite quickly. It's all about the centre-backs, really. That's where the next changes have to come. I asked Postecoglou about it in that little sit-down we had. That's the first bit that we've put out. You'll have seen it, hopefully, the quotes. If you haven't, I asked Postecoglou, was he looking to have new options at centre-back before the first game of the season, or in time for that first game of the season? He said, I think that's definitely our intention. Absolutely. We've been working on it for a while, and we're definitely trying to get it done as quickly as possible. So we know the top targets. We know it's Van der Ven and Tapsoba, and that talks have happened with Wolfsburg and Bayer Leverkusen respectively. It's not been entirely ruled out that they could move for both, but that would require getting, that sounds awful to say, but getting everyone out, or lots of players out. We know they'll listen to offers for Sanchez, Rodon, Tanganga. Eric Dyer wants to stay. It's an interesting situation with Eric Dyer, really. He's desperate to prove himself to Postecoglou as a fully fit player, and he kind of really is excited about playing under Postecoglou. But then the other side to it, of course, is that he's only got a year left in his contract. So it's whether they tie him down to a new contract, which I'm sure would not go down well with some Spurs fans. Personally, I've said it before, I don't think he'll be a first choice central defender next season. And I think as a squad player, if he would be happy to stay, I don't really think it's the biggest deal in the world. But I know every time I say something like that, there's lots of comments of people going, he's rubbish. And I get it. People don't see think he's that great. But I just think a fully fit Eric Dyer is probably a bit better than, well, certainly is a lot better than we saw last season. He didn't have a bad season at all the season before. But we'll see what happens with him. If a decent bid were to come in and he would decide, okay, if I'm going to start regularly for them, who knows what could happen. Who else does Spurs like? Tosin Adarabioyo, of course, Fulham, Palace defenders. They like a couple of those, don't they? Mark Gay and Anderson, Joachim Anderson. And we know they've spoken to Barcelona about another option is maybe bringing Clement Longley back, making his move permanent. We shall see. One player, one central defender that is coming in the door, albeit a young one. This is not impinging on those two senior centre-backs that they'd like to sign, is Ashley Phillips, young Barcelona, young Blackburn defender, only 18 years old, in a deal worth about £3 million. Like I say, he's not expected to be one of the main two signings. This is very much a player for the future. He will be inserted into the first team squad to learn and develop, certainly in this first half of the season is the idea. Spurs kind of taken advantage, I feel, of Blackburn having some financial issues right now, and they've got in there for him. 6'3" defender, big lad, England under-19 international. But yeah, it's very early days for him. He's only had 8 championship appearances under his belt, which came last season as he kind of started to make his breakthrough. And Spurs, looking to get that finalised and get him hopefully flown over for the Asian part of the tour. It was quite interesting on social media. It was like, I was very wary that if I just put out that he was coming, that people would get very angry and say, oh, there's a cheap option. That's them not paying the money for Tapsoba or Ven. So I very clearly said, no, he's one for the future. He's not one of the two that they're looking for as senior players. And I got loads of replies like, one for the future? Why don't we put him in now? We need a defender for the now. And it was a bit like, okay, right, okay, great, I can't win. But it's fine. What I'm interested to see is whether how it affects Alfie Dorrington. Alfie Dorrington, 18-year-old, very highly rated central defender in the Spurs Academy, who signed a new deal last month until 2026. Very much expected to be kind of on the fringes of trying to impress Postecoglou and maybe getting, I don't know, a chance in like a League Cup or maybe FA Cup this season. Ashley Phillips coming in and immediately going into that first team squad. How that affects him, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know if he'll go out on loan, Alfie, because I think the idea was to kind of get him a lot of under-21 football as well this season, really help him step up to that level first. But I guess you could argue, or Ashley Phillips would argue, he's played in the Championship, which is something Alfie Dorrington obviously hasn't done yet. So he is that step ahead, but we shall see what happens with him. Ultimately now it's mainly about whittling that squad down as well, especially if you want to bring in players too, because 31 players taken out here to Australia, 6 players at home, the 5 injured ones and Hugo Lloris, of course. 37 players in all. Obviously some of those are academy players that will, not be considered first team kind of senior players, but in that, when I was talking to Postecoglou about the squad and everything, he said this during our 45-minute sit-down, which is one of the stuff that has come out already. He said, because I think I asked him, the question was, have you now decided which areas you need to improve in your squad? And he was quite clear that no. I'd already identified them. But it was interesting because he then went to talk about the squad and he said, some of the areas to improve I had identified early on. I don't think it's any secret about some of the areas we needed to strengthen. The goalkeeper was one and central defence is another. Which makes you wonder why the central defence has still not been strengthened. Look, I get it, Maddison's a great signing. Vicario obviously was one of the priorities and Solomon's a free transfer, but come on. If the defender was one of the first things that he identified, it really should have been done by now. And he said, in terms of the other boys, we've got a big squad, but my view is I wanted to bring them along and just work with them and get some clarity in my head and give clarity to them, because I think you'll find that a lot of them will say, to be honest, it's not for me, the way we're playing and the way we're training, because like I say, I do things differently. Every day we have together, every game like the West Ham one, it gives you clarity about certain things, and there's no doubt that the squad will be whittled down and there will be some more changes between now and probably the end of the transfer window. And I thought the key thing in there for me, other than knowing his priorities, was that he said, I think you'll find a lot of them will say, to be honest, it's not for me the way we're playing and the way we're training, which there was really a lot. And I wondered, was he talking about those players who have come back into the squad from loan? You know, the likes, some of them like Lo Celso has not been at the club for 18 months pretty much. Is that who he means? I mean, it came after the West Ham game. So did he get a sense from players playing in the game that, yeah, they're not really going to take to it, I can see already, and they're not enjoying it? Which is weird, because watching them in the game, watching them in training, it looks like pretty much all the players are doing what he's asking them to do, and they're playing in a completely different way. So, yeah, I've been intrigued to see what that exactly meant and who he meant. Well, I guess we'll find out in the coming weeks. But, we know he's a guy that likes to make decisions without emotion, and does so he can do what's best for the team. And 37 players, that's got to get down to around 25 for a season without any European fixtures. 25, and then you have 3 or 4 first team players, academy players there to bolster it as well if required. And also, Postecoglou is a man who likes to really use his subs. You'll see, like, often around the hour mark, he'll make sometimes 2, maybe 3 changes, just to kind of freshen it up, because his style of football is, we've said that word a million times, it's relentless. So he kind of needs fresh legs in key positions. So he'll need a strong bench so the level won't go down. So that 25 is going to be really interesting to see how it kind of shakes up and who it's made up of. But it will have learnt plenty about this team from that first game. And obviously we've still got 4 matches to go until Brentford, which is a massive challenge away from home on the opening day of the season, opening game of the season. So these 4 games are going to be crucial to continue to get that idea of his football across. And I'm hoping to see lots more goals. Because, the early signs I think were quite positive. The need for quality at the back is still absolutely glaring. And to be fair, Postecoglou appears to agree, I think. I'm pretty sure he does. Certainly if he's saying that's an area that needs strengthening. So, yeah, let's see what the coming games bring. Off to Thailand and Bangkok tomorrow. Fly off. Strangely connecting via Singapore. So I'm actually going to the third destination before I get to the second destination, just on a quick stopover on the connection. But yeah, it's going to be very different. It's only like 17, 16 degrees at the most here in Perth, because obviously it's the Australian winter. And from what I can see, it's like 32, 33 degrees in Thailand tomorrow. And it's monsoon season. And Singapore's much drier heat. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, the Leicester game is going to be a good test. The game against Lion City Sailors could be a bit of a, pardon to use the expression when we're talking about lions, but a bit of a mauling. Those sailors might get thunk. Yeah, having heard from people I know that live in Singapore, I don't think the level is going to... Obviously, they were last-minute replacements for Roma, so I don't want to be too disparaging, but I think they may struggle, especially 3 games in. Spurs are going to be playing even better football, so yeah, that could be a scary scoreline. For the Lion City Sailors, which is an incredible name. But yeah, really looking forward to it. Like I say, I went to Singapore 4 years ago, and it was awesome, and the fans are so passionate in all of these places. You just don't think people appreciate how much passion you have to have for your football club to get up at those times in the night every few days, or think about how late midweek games are and stuff like that. Night matches, what they actually are out here, it's like 3-4 in the morning and stuff. That takes a lot of passion. It really does. So yeah, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do another one of these videos until maybe in Singapore, or if not, just after I touch back down in the UK. But I'm sure we'll have plenty more to talk about and plenty more developments, hopefully in the centre-back front and hopefully not in the Harry Kane front. Like I say, as I said earlier, Harry Kane, I'm still told that he's open to all three potential options. Just not a new contract this summer. But potentially, if he is still at Spurs and he enjoys being at Spurs, that yes, he would be open to a new contract in the months ahead. But again, it's all down to Bayern Munich and what they're going to do and whether they're going to bite as much as they bark. If you'll pardon the slightly weird comparing a German club to a dog. I don't know where that went and where that came from, but there you go. Right, I'm going to head off because it is very late here. It is 10:30 at night, and by the time this goes up, like I say, it could end up being far closer to midnight. And this is the thing about doing videos at night time here, that there's still plenty of the day left in the UK for things to happen. So apologies if it's already out of date by the time you watch it, but fingers crossed it's not for me. Although I'd love it if Spurs suddenly made a move on a centre-back, and I could do another little video and we talk about that, but let's see what happens. Right, I'm going to head off now. And I've got to pack for my flight tomorrow as well. So as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.